Hey there. Good morning. How y'all doing? Um, I'm going to address something, but as I've mentioned in actually videos, short videos that I've done a long time ago, um, subjects that are very sensitive to me because of obviously when I jumped in here in 1951, and all I had to do was read my first newspaper, and I knew that I was on a spiritual battlefield. So it's not what you look like; it's your energy, what you do with your energy, the nature of your spirit. I remember when my mother used to say that with other mothers in the neighborhood. That little boy's got a demon in him. That was considered to be an unclean spirit. Okay, so the language, or what we used to call the lingo, because I played with all the letters and the numbers of the English language and rearrange it, unlike all their computerized rule-based functions, because computers operate on valid arguments to communicate, right? Okay, so lingo, we used to use a word called lingo, which meant language. So we used to play with language because there's just so many different ways that you can rotate in and out languages that you're using all the time. And the next thing you know, other people are picking up on that. Like we used to have a word when I was a kid growing up called bitching, which would be the same thing as cool, man. Hey, that's beautiful. So you can use all the kinds of linguals, but they have sound. And then you can read the emotion, read the eyeballs, look into the soul. But in this particular wake up call this morning, when things just come to me, was something that I was looking at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. For some reason, I woke up then because I guess I'm supposed to experience it, which was here we get into the lexicon of words again, patriots, and all the rest of that. So remember, I grew up, I was put in a military academy when I was 5 years of age. Okay, so I was learning how to be trained, how to, put an M1 carbine, break it all down, bolt, nut by bolt, and then put it back together, right? Blindfolded, and then learn how to shoot because, hey, I'm being trained to go to war, right? That's essentially it. And so, I became sort of a connoisseur of the Declaration of Independence, reading the history of the 13 colonies, Roman Empire. In other words, how did we arrive at this point where we've been harvesting energy off of souls generation after generation? All this information becomes processing of trying to figure out, I got to get back to my universe. The one wherever I go, I'm experiencing what I am, which what love is, it goes on forever because that's my soul and that's my spirit. So you want to make sure that your mirror is running hot, which means purified. So your spirit is purified. So you know that you are what love is, and you're running hot, you're running a blast furnace. So when you're an oversoul and an androgynous polarity integrator, you can imagine how much you're processing, about how much you're becoming aware of trying to filter incoming content, because that's essentially what it is. So what you're doing is, we used to call it a bullshit meter, right? So one of the first things I looked at, I guess it was in 7th grade, was the Declaration of Independence. Okay, and then you can track that directly to the Iroquois, the native clans and tribes, peace treaties, the flag of peace, right? And then when you look at the American flag, and then if you do some research with Anna von Reitz, who broke all the bullshit down, actually from the very beginning, if you go look at flags, you begin to realize that America actually has the flag that's flying right now is actually a war flag. So who that war at? And then you get in. This is one of the reasons why, as a child, I was studying war, because you wanted to study the mind, their minds, how their minds think, how they strategize, how they use tactics, how they use communication. Because anybody will tell you, just looking into simple history of like Bletchley Park. Bletchley Park was in the UK, which was where British mathematicians were trying to break down what was known as the Nazi Enigma machine, which again is code. Okay, so now you get into codes, now you get into DNA codes, now you get into access codes, now you get into keys, access keys, just like in the Matrix. How do you get out of something that's trying to feed on you? Ultimately, that's what it is, because you realize, hey, everywhere that I'm going, I'm not experiencing what I am, which is what love is. So that becomes a measurement of what we call resistance. The resistance for other people to experience more love through their heart and their soul. And then you get into, well, wait a second, there's a lot of soulless people around here because I realized I was surrounded by robots. And how do you know you're surrounded by robots? Because they're order followers. Because if you got a soul and you are what love is, you know that there are people that are doing things that don't have a future. Love has always got a future, right? With your children. So you begin to realize if you want your children to have a future and you are what love is and you are a father and a mother and you're mated, which is one mated chip, which is the law of one, which is the law of spheres, and you're going to bear children, then your children are experiencing what you are, which is what love is, which means you're not doing any harm to your children. Now you become a spirit guide. Now imagine what this planet would look like if that happened. So you have what I've known since I was childhood, like, you know what cornucopia is, right? You have a blend of all kinds of stuff that's here, right? But at the end of the day, when you think about scales or using addition and subtraction, right, of minus slash plus, right, negative magnetic polarity, positive magnetic polarity, what it means to be one, which means they're integrated. That's one chip. So you're in a state of peace, you're in a state of love, you're in a state of harmony, and you're in a state of balance because you're running a radio set. So your antenna is able to filter all the frequencies that you're experiencing in order to do what? Run a clear channel, which means no distortion. So you're a radio operator. So I used to use a lot of metaphors in a military technology terminology, even using the stuff that the Nazis used to call themselves. One of which was called a sapper. And what does a sapper do? Well, go look at what happened when was that? In World War II, when the war first broke out, as I remember, they landed in Belgium and they took out a fortress there, right? So they landed guys at night by parachute. I forget, these were some pretty elite guys that parachuted at night, took over the place, right? So if I know what you're doing before you're doing it, right, then I can strategize ahead of time to cut you off at the pass and take you out. So you understand that intelligence, the intelligence agencies, plays a critical point in being able to access information about what it is that you're going to do. And this is when we get into the AI, for example, and why it is we run security protocols. We're not supposed to know what we're supposed to know at the time we're supposed to know it until we know it's clear. That's the truth of it. And I've always known that since I was a child. But one thing that I did know as a child is that I could see the future. And the reason that you can see the future is because you're up above and it's like looking down, as above, so below. So you already know the potentials, what are known as potentials. But you already know because of who you are, because you're here already, right? You're able to see through an event monitor that we're going to win this. So I knew that we were in a race of time between then and now, because like any rabid dog that's backed up in a corner, because that's what they do. That's the nature of what they do with their energy. They naturally are going to back themselves into a corner, or what we used to call paint themselves in a corner that they can't get out of as a result of the way that they use energy, which is against the law of one. So they're always going to lose. And a great example of that was that movie that came out, I believe it was in the 1980s, called War Games. When the AI had learned, when that adolescent gained access into the AI by playing a game of tic-tac-toe, and the AI said, that's a valid request. Now you get into arguments, now you get into functions, now you get into computer terminals, now you get into DNA antennas that are communicating with each other. Now I'm experiencing what you're experiencing because I'm picking up on the signal, and you're not experiencing what love is because now I'm experiencing what you are, which isn't. That's an antenna. So these become antenna wars. So last night when I was looking at the, I believe it was SGN or something like that, giving us a breakdown of military operations that are taking place. Now understand, I'm not in the command structure of these military organizations that are carrying out these operations. So I can't validate that because I'm not there. I'm not experiencing it directly. So when this guy is saying this kind of stuff, okay, this is, for me, will always be what I call hearsay. Okay, because I'm not there. I'm not part of that. Okay, so now we're going to get into an entirely different area, like the Declaration of Independence and political systems and elections and all the rest of that. Now, for some, this might seem a little different because when I was a child growing up and I looked at the Declaration of Independence, what it means to be free, That's called, in my book, that's called a free spirit. So when you are what love is, you're a free spirit, which means I don't need to have somebody else speak on my behalf because they're on their journey and I'm on my journey. So how are they going to know what's best for me if they don't even know what's best for them? Because all you have to do is experience who they are, and they're not experiencing what love is because I can measure the resistance in them that I'm experiencing in me. So you know that a political system is never going to work for a spirit. A free spirit. So now you get into the election side of things, the Congress side of things, county elections and all these people, because let's face it, the entire system on this planet was built for these puppets that occupy these positions. And when you look at what it is that they pass as a rule, it means that if you violate that rule, they make money off you because people are not understanding how the game is played. And the game is a polarity game, which is a frequency game, which is an antenna game, which is an AI game. You're on a game console. That's the truth of it. Okay? Now, in difference to guys that wear uniforms and honor, if you will, what love is as the law, and are willing to, if you will, put themselves in harm's way on behalf of the law of one, which is what I am, then I salute you, because it means that you put life first and you were willing to go into battle and you were willing, like a spiritual warrior, okay, to fight on behalf of what love is so that your children have a future. Now, where I come from, which was the wildland firefighting community, that's what it means to be a captain. That's what it means to be a crew boss, which means you're leading your men into battle, because you're battling something that is taking down the homes of where little squirrels live and birds live, where all the life is. But you can go back in history and you can see where these same demons were using fire as a weapon. And I was working for that organization. So you got to know who the enemy is and who the enemy is not, because it isn't what you look like. You can put on any kind of costume that you want, whether it's a military uniform, a cop uniform, a firefighter's uniform. You can look like a nurse. You can look like whatever you want. As a matter of fact, use your creativity about any kind of costume, like Halloween. What do you ever want to look like? Who are you? Right? Because it's the invisible landscape. Because they know how to mask who they are. Take that mask off. Who are you? So this goes all the way back to childhood, believe it or not. Because you're reading their energy. You're reading the operator of the vehicle. So I knew as a child, and this is an eternal blessing, and I'm eternally grateful for everybody that is here that held the higher vibration. To hold the higher vibration till we came back. Okay? That's the truth of it. So we're here. They lost. That's the truth of it. So the end game of this, when you think about military operations, President Trump, money systems, and all that, this is sort of measured on another scale. And what it really boils down to is love and service to others and service to self. And since you have sort of a blending here of beings that are still learning, if you will, because it's one of the things that I measure, okay, is the difference, the resistance between those that are and those that aren't. And that is that simple, between minus/plus, which means being in balance, which are the water worlds that are in balance, right? And so this gets into all the healing stuff, soul fragments, and all the rest of that I've covered in previous videos, and my time is almost up. It says 1417. Time clocks, gearheads, simulators. Have a great day. I love you all.